Hi, I'm Bill Burrud. The program is Treasure. And the story? The story is one of the strangest tales of gold and terror to ever come out of the West. It's the story of an Indian named Queho, driven by the reasoning of a half-crazed, twisted mind to an orgy of killing that often involved innocent people he didn't even know. Now, Queho lived alone in the barren, rugged El Dorado Mountains. He prowled this wild, desolate country just north of Nelson, Nevada, and only 40 miles from Las Vegas. For some 30 years, he used a never-ending source of gold nuggets to buy his food and supplies. Nuggets that came from a hidden mine somewhere here in the El Dorados. A strange story? Ah, yes, but stranger still is the fact that it all occurred just a short distance from one of America's most exciting vacation spots. Yes, today the Las Vegas of dude ranches, gambling casinos, lavish hotels, and nightclubs hardly remembers Queho. Now it's a happy city that's become a favorite vacation spot for countless thousands of Americans. A city whose gaiety and fun give no clue to the bloody events of only 25 years ago. It happened here in the El Dorado Mountains. This is where he lived, Queho, the killer, lurking like a desert wolf in the shadows of a cave, striking without warning and disappearing into the vastness of these primitive mountains. For 30 years, they hunted him. For 30 years, he evaded capture with the cunning of a wild animal. Some men, like Deputy Sheriff Frank Waite of Clark County, Nevada, spent 3 decades trying to track down the legendary killer of the El Dorados. Many times they were so close to him, they'd come upon one of his campfires, still warm and smoldering. Sheriff Waite often took friendly Indian trackers with him in an effort to capture the elusive half-breed. The most experienced hunters and trackers were deceived by Queho's ability to lose his pursuers. He killed so many people without apparent reason, one of the first being an old woodcutter named Woodworth. The old fellow had employed Queho at one time had liked the moody Indian. They'd cut wood together on Timber Mountain. They'd worked side by side, day after day, and then suddenly, without warning, for no reason, the half-breed turned on the old man and murdered him in cold blood. Oh, there were others, too. A man named Doc Gilbert, who was a night watchman at the Gold Bug Mill. Strangely enough, the only thing Queho stole was the night watchman's badge, number 896, which was found later in his cave. Why, then, did he kill the watchman? No one knows. All we know for certain is that robbery was not the motive for the killing. The last time Queho was seen alive was here on Fremont Street in Las Vegas in the year 1930. The man who spotted him was stunned at the sight of the legendary killer walking down the busy city street. And the sheriff, who at that moment was following a fresh Queho lead outside of town, came rushing back to capture the outlaw. And now let's meet a man who can tell us what happened that sunny afternoon that Queho strolled into Las Vegas. The young man we sent up to do the story for us, Milas Hinshaw. Milas, what happened that afternoon when word spread around town that the killer was loose?
Well, Bill, you know, the people that lived in Las Vegas had heard the stories about Queho and what a vicious killer he was. And so that afternoon when he walked down the street, down Fremont Street, he strolled stealthily through the crowds of people that backed up, and he walked into the grocery store and he bought a can of peaches, and then he disappeared back up in the rugged El Dorado Mountains again, and that was the last time he was ever seen alive, 1930.
They'd never believe that in a Western movie.
You know, I remember how enthusiastic you were when you first told me this yarn. With so many tales of treasure, why did you choose this particular story?
Well, Bill, because it's more or less contemporary. A lot of the treasure stories, ones dealing with lost galleons, lost mines, have so much fiction mixed up with them. I mean, it's tough to separate the fact from the fiction. So this one was so contemporary that the facts haven't had a chance to become confused. And so I thought that we could probably get a real good story out of this with a lot of factual material, which I think we did.
Well, where would you start a trip like this, Milas?
Well, the best place to start one is on one of those fabulous hotels on the Las Vegas Strip. The members of our particular little expedition, Bill, included my wife, Peggy, Buddy Noonan, one of our camera researchers, and of course, myself. The particular plush hotel that we'd picked out was the Flamingo, located right on the Las Vegas Strip. Before we arrived at the hotel, I had contacted Bert Perry, who works there, and he had done some preliminary research work for us. And he told me an amazing tale, Bill. He had found the body of Queho.
You mean Queho was still around Las Vegas?
Well, yes, in a mummified state. It seems as though in 1940, a prospector named Art Schroeder had found the mummified remains in a cave overlooking the Colorado River, high in the El Dorado Mountains. He told us that we would find it in a barn in the south end of Las Vegas. So we went there to have a look for ourselves. The caretaker at the barn took some old horse collars and some pieces of lumber off a pine box. And when it creaked open, this is the sight that greeted our eyes: the mummified remains of the killer Queho.
As you told me, he had killed more people than Billy the Kid.
23 people have been recorded as falling before his gun. We were also able to clarify some of the legends. We understood that he had 2 sets of teeth, a dental oddity, but he did not, and also that he had a club foot. We could find no indications of this. We did find a bandaged leg, though, which perhaps explains his death, perhaps from a rattlesnake bite which he tried to cure himself. Inside the cave, when they found him in 1940, were all types of implements taken off the people he killed. Here you see some scissors, some shaving gear, and a leather punch, all which were taken from his cave by the men who found him in 1940. They found pieces of tendon out of wild animals which were used for hair traps to catch the rattlesnakes in his cave which he lived from.
Well, is one of these men still alive today?
Yes, Art Schroeder, one of the 2 men that found the body in 1940, lives in Boulder City. So that night we went out to visit him, and he tried to draw us a map from memory. From the 18 years that have passed since he had been to the cave, he drew us a crude map showing the location high above the river. And it is Art Schroeder himself who substantiates the treasure story. He told us when they found the body that they also found primitive pieces of mining equipment, plus a solid gold ring made from a single nugget, handmade. He also told us the stories about how Queho used raw nuggets of gold to trade in the towns of Nelson and Searchlight, using a go-between to get the supplies to him. Yes, said Art, there's definitely treasure in those mountains.
Did you decide to try to see if you could relocate the cave that Art Schroeder had discovered?
Well, we were determined to go into the area and try to find it, but of course that night we decided to take in some of the sights around Las Vegas and have a little enjoyment for ourselves before leaving the next morning bright and early.